All right, all right, all right. Hello, everybody. I know it's been a couple weeks, at least 1 or 2, 3 weeks before I've done a lesson. So today I want to do a quick lesson. So the last lesson that I did was lesson 9. So this would be lesson 10. You are going to see some video changes because I was trying to figure out a couple format issues. Since then, I experimented a little bit with a couple of the other channels and I figured out a couple of things. So if the format looks a little different from lesson 9 to lesson 10, is because I'm improving what I'm doing every time I record. But anyway, guys, so for today's lesson, all you're going to need is just basic paper. You're going to be using a ruler and just a regular pencil or pen or whatever you want to use. Okay, so just a quick recap. So everything can be broken down into circles, squares, and triangles. Okay, this is 2D. In 3D, you have spheres, you have cubes, and you have cones. Now, why am I constantly reviewing this? Because every education kind of builds upon the previous lesson that you have learned. Okay, obviously there's subversions of these, so you'll have things like a rectangle or just like a flat box. Technically, it's just a rectangle in two ways. And then you have things like an oval. So this would be another version. Or another version of this would be a cylinder. So it's pretty much like a version of these two combined together. It'll give you a cylinder. So these are more your 3D shapes. Okay, so you have your core shape, your sub shapes or your 3D shapes. And then we talked about 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. And anything going horizontal, vertical, horizontal, or an angle. That's what we talked about. So in 1 point perspective, anything going vertical or horizontal is not affected, but anything going at an angle is. So if I have my vanishing point right there, there's my box. I use that as a reference. I use my reference line, and I have drawn my box in 1 point perspective. In 2 point perspective, anything going vertical is not affected, but anything going horizontal and at an angle is. And again, this is just a quick recap because technically you could go back and look at the previous lessons, but I always like to kind of recap a little bit so it stays nice and fresh in folks' minds. Okay. So you have right there anything, it's not, so anything vertical is not affected, but horizontal and angle pretty much become the same. So they are affected by the vanishing points. And in 3 point perspective, all of them are affected. So we have the horizon line. We have our third vanishing point. Always start with a reference line. I hear the cats in the background doing shenanigans. And you can go back to the tutorials and see how I did this so quickly. Okay, so we have that. Now we also have to remember that depending on what we're seeing, if it's right on the horizon line, it's directly in front of us. So think of the plane. If it's right above us, we're going to see the belly of the item. If it's right below us or below the horizon line, we're going to be looking down on the object. So I'm going to put a shoe here on the ground. So we're going to see the top of the shoe. Okay, so depending where you're at, that's where you're going to see it. Okay, so we started talking about shading. So for most part, you can have your pencils, and your pencils will have a range so that it goes from hard to, it goes B to H. The higher the number, so then you have right here, you have the midpoint. The higher the number, the softer or harder the lead will be. Most of us on average use like an F or HB. So HB is pretty much the standard one that most of us see, and this is pretty much going back to the previous lesson. The softer the lead is, the faster you're going to go right through your material. The harder it is, the longer it's going to last you. So if you ever get like a kit, on average, your kit is going to last you. Your H's will like last for years. But your B's, you're always going to go through them because the lead is softer. Because the softer, you're going to go right through them a lot faster. Now, so that's about 9 lessons worth of stuff in like a couple minutes, so hopefully that wasn't too overwhelming. Now, the last thing we talked about last time is how lighting behaved. So we talked about how lighting technically moves at 360 degrees all the way around. So that's that part. Okay. The other thing that we also talked about is that lighting tends to be reflective. Okay, so depending on which angle, it's going to bounce off. Now, depending on what kind of surface you're doing, so it comes down to material and color. Okay, so something that it is metallic is going to be higher reflective. Something that is dull is going to be less reflective. And then something that is transparent is going to go right through it. So it's going to have a combination of literally bouncing up the surface, but also penetrating right through the item because it's transparent. And then again, it depends on the material, the viscosity. So obviously, water is going to behave different. Light is going to behave different in water versus jello because it just depends on the viscosity of the item that you're going right through. They're both translucent, but they're both a little bit different. So last time we talked about how to do shading. We also did things in perspective and heading towards us. So this week what I want to do is pretty much go through how to kind of create a basic shadow, how to figure it out. And this is just kind of a cheat. Okay, so let's start with just something very simple. So we're going to grab a ruler, we're going to grab a piece of paper, and we're going to go ahead, and again, this is not the know-all bio, but this is just kind of get you your toe into the kiddie pool. Okay, 6-inch line. If you don't have a ruler, if you go back to lesson 1, I teach you guys how to create a hard edge ruler using just paper. Doesn't have to be perfect. And you're going to find the halfway point. So it's 6 inches. And this is the 3-inch mark. Okay. So once you have that done, you're going to go ahead and you're going to measure down another 3 inches. And these are lessons that I've taught and I've developed throughout the years. It's very easy for me to explain this to people when there's just something like that they can measure the first time. So that's what's kind of very procedural, but it's actually a little bit more organic in the real world. But this is just to kind of give you a basic example. Okay, so we go down 3 inches, and then right here at the bottom, we're going to give ourselves 1/2 inch left or right. Okay, so that is going to give us our edge. Okay, so what we're going to do is it's going to end up looking like this. And I know this is really poorly drawn, but this is just for me to kind of give you an idea. So that's pretty much what we're going for right there. So right now we have our first reference line. So this is only going to be a 1-point perspective. So we already established that anything going horizontal or vertical is not affected. So if this is 1 inch on one side, that means it's going to be in 1 inch all the way around. So let's go ahead and create a 1-inch box all the way around. Okay, and we already know that in this situation, we're going to create our box. Okay, now this is going to be a little interesting because technically, normally this is a solid box, so technically you'll only be able to see 2 planes, but we're trying to fake showing that this thing has like volume. So we actually need to find all 4 sides. Let me explain. So let's head over here. And I'm going to use my vanishing point A. And I'm going to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, which is all the corners. So think of it like if you're drawing a see-through box. Okay. Excuse me. Did not mean to make any noises. Okay, so we now have our plane, because remember, boxes has 6 planes. Okay, so we pretty much discovered this plane right here. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to figure out the distance right here in this area. And for the sake of simplicity, we're just simply going to make it 3/4. Excuse me, yeah, 3/4 of the distance, or 3/4, or whatever you want to call it. We'll call it 3/4 of an inch. And that's going to give me my back point. So if I have 1, 2 in display, now I'm finding 3 and 4 back here, and I'm just going to draw the line across, because anything going vertical and horizontal is not affected, and that should measure really close to 3/4 of an inch. I'm not going to go too crazy with the it must be perfect, because let's be honest, this is just a quick exercise, and exact measurements, it is not the objective right here. So now that we have the bottom plane, so we have discovered the side plane right here, and now we discovered the bottom plane, we need to find this plane back here. So as we know, anything going vertical and horizontal not affected, so all I have to do is simply draw straight up. And go ahead and draw across. So with that, we pretty much have all the basics all the way across. There we go. So we have now found our box all the way through. Okay? All right, so what do we do from here? Okay, what I want to do now that I find all my planes, so this is the front, so this will be 1, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, the top is 5, and then the bottom is 6. Okay, so I'm just kind of going by that. Again, if this is getting too crazy, just let me know. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to kind of figure out my shadow. Okay, so the way that I start is I'm going to put my light source right on the horizon line. So I'll go right here, and I'm going to do 1 inch in, and we're going to pretend that this is my light bulb. This is the sun. Okay, you just need the point of reference. I just like to make doodles because that's just the brain my brain works. Now at this point, this item is technically on a flat surface. So from the edge from the front and the bottom, I'm simply gonna go ahead and I'm gonna draw a line across. So this is gonna be fairly light. Okay. Now, here's what I want to do. This is technically a solid shape. This is a solid box, is a solid shape. All right. So what I wanted to do right here, what I want to do here is that I'm going to be using this corner, because remember, all this right here is getting hit by light. So the side plane is at full light. So we think about that range. We go light gray. This is from the shading lesson from the last round. Dark gray. Excuse me, and dark. Anything that is light is directly being hit by the light source. So these two right here are getting hit directly by the light source. This right here is getting partially hit because the light is bouncing from the surface and also bouncing back, but it's not hitting it directly, so it's losing some of its strength. But then right here, this whole area here is technically in shadow. This whole plane on the side, in relation to the light, this whole side right here is in full shadow. So the last thing the light engages with is really this lip here, which is this lip here. All right. And the reason why I keep kind of going from here to here, guys, because I want you to start thinking in three-dimensional space. Even though this is a 2D illustration, you understand that this thing is interacting with a surface. This thing has mass and volume, and you're simply given the illusion of mass and volume in a two-dimensional image. So right here, I'm going to go to my light source, right up here. That's a little circle there. And now that I've drawn these lines across, and again, this is not perfect, guys. This is just to kind of give you an idea of how to do this. Just to kind of give you an idea. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to that vanishing point, or that light source. Is technically a light source. And I'm going to lightly draw a line intersecting here. And I'm going to call this light. Then I'm going to do this again with the other edge. And I'm pretty sure there's tons of people that got better ways to do this, and that's totally fine. Okay, so we have our light source here, light source here. Okay, now some people like to go ahead and draw it in perspective, which is fine. But honestly, for this, I'm just simply just going to go ahead and I'm going to draw that line right here, because that's technically the edge of the shadow. So that's right there. We found out where the shadow is. All right, now here is where this gets kind of funky. Okay, it's nothing too crazy, but it's where it kind of gets kind of funky. Okay, so let me see. I want to do this. Brainstorm. Actually, no. You know what? I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it because visually it's more appealing this way. So go right here. Ignore this point here. But what we're going to do is we're going to use that vanishing point there. And this right here looks like it's more in perspective. Sometimes you kind of, I hate to say this, but sometimes when you measure things out, they don't make sense. But when you actually kind of use your other tools, it clicks in. It's hard to explain. But yeah, so ignore this. This is just to kind of give you the angle. But then use this right here. This would be your vanishing point. So maybe I should get rid of this in the future. Maybe that's something I got to get rid of. But again, I'm constantly refining my lessons because, you know, you never know. Nobody's perfect. Okay. So now that we have figured out, all right, here is my light source and here's my object. Now, we talked about this before and you can see it right here. The closer the item is to the surface, look how nice and crisp that shadow is right there. As it gets further away, the shadow keeps getting softer. So technically right here, this is going to be your dark, and then it's going to literally gradient out into really light or zero at this point. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and erase my reference. Make this light. So I'm going to go right here. And you could go ahead and try to do the gradient thing if you want. That's totally fine. But technically, right here, the closer it is to the box, the darker it's going to be. Now, right here in the corner, I'm making these edges crisp. But technically, what happens is it doubles. So it pretty much, this is the gradient across, but technically, it also does it twice here because the light is bouncing and it's also going inside here. But that it gets a little, hey, that's a little confusing. That's more of an observation thing. So you can see right here, the closer it is to the body, the darker it is, and it starts getting lighter as you go all the way to the edge. And you keep doing this until it goes all the way to zero. Okay, so that's pretty much how technically we find our box. So, and then go ahead and erase all the stuff on the inside so that way it's not as chaotic. And this is just kind of a quick way to kind of think of your shadows or trying to figure out where your shadows go. I know that's something that I always ask and I could never really quite get a straight answer, and this is the answer that I came up with from observation. So you have your solid object, you find out all the sides of the object, you establish your light source, and then you kind of measure out the furthest point that's impacted by that, and you draw the shadow from there. So let me give you an example with a circle. Because as we know, we are constantly dealing with a mix between organic and inorganic content. Okay, so right here, there is my horizon line. Okay, and I'm going to draw a circle. Do I have I do not have a perfect tiny little circle on me. Soda cap? Nope. I'm just gonna have to wing it. Okay, so let's say here is my circle, my perfect circle, like the band. It was like, oh, you're old women are. Okay. Okay. So right here, this is the horizon line because I'm putting this just below the horizon line. I am giving the illusion that this item is actually on a surface. Okay. So from here, I'm going to set my light source up here. Okay. Now, we've already talked about this last time where the object right here, so you're going to have the closest impacted by the light, that's going to be your light. Then it's going to go to light gray, dark gray, and then dark. Okay, so we already established that. But then the part that we did not talk about is how to establish the shadow. So right here, I'm going to draw at the base. And this is, again, this is just to kind of give you an idea how to approach this. If you go online, I'm pretty sure there's other people that have fantastic tutorials on how to do this, but this is what worked out for me. So if I have a circle, I figure out where the centermost point is. Then using my point of reference here, I figure out in my circular area, what is the one point, what is the furthest point impacted by this light source. And that will be there. And I do the same thing on the other side. You see that right there? A little less, should down a little less. There we go. Okay. So now this kind of gives me the length of this shadow. Okay, because of how close this light is. So from here, I can either try to manually, so I'm going to kind of fudge this a little bit, and I'm going to draw myself an elongated oval. And notice that underneath the ball is where I have it the darkest, and as it gets away, it gets a little lighter. And let's go ahead and fill it in. So right at the base where it's touching, this is going to be your darkest point. Because again, this is the darkest point in the sphere. And again, I'm not going for perfection here because I'm just trying to explain the shadow, not much the sphere itself. We already covered that in the last lesson. Okay, and as we continues to move away, that shadow is going to get lighter and lighter and lighter. So see, it gives the illusion that now this item has mass. And I'm going to erase this right here. Because again, I just like to do breakdowns so that way you guys can see. And there we go. So now that gives me the circle. So the area closest to the base is going to be the darkest. And as it gets away from this main point here, it's going to get lighter. So it's going to go from dark, dark gray, light, or zero, as I like to call it. So that is with, now we find it with a cube, now we find it with a cylinder. Let's also find it with a cone. And it's the same similar thing. Horizon line. So in this situation, I'm going to find the whole circle. Right now, I could draw the square and all that fun stuff, but I don't feel like doing all that right now. Okay, so what we know about a cone is that it's technically a cylinder, except the one side is been collapsed in. Okay, that's pretty much all that it is. So I'm going to put my light source over here. Alright, I've already determined that this side right here, just based on this light source that's getting hit by a light. So that is all light. So light gray, dark gray, and then dark. And it with cones it's a little different because, as I mentioned before, light tends to wrap around an object, so it's not going to be as aggressive as a cube. The cube is the most aggressive. The the rounded surface is going to be less aggressive when you see that harsh division. So technically, it's going to be closer to this. It's going to be just past, because again, the light is wrapping around the surface. So that's going to be light, light gray, and dark. And from here, I'm going to draw, from this further point, I'm going to draw my lines. And then I'm also going to find the center of this. Anyway, just remember how when we did the planes, how we used to draw circles? You create a box, you divide it into quarters, and then you draw the curve across, and I will give you the circle. So go back to that lesson. Again, everything that I teach kind of builds upon everything else. Okay, so now that we have that center area, okay, now I can go to the furthest tip, and using my light source, which is this bad boy right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the tip of this cone and that center line, and that is going to give me the length of that shadow. Now again, just like before, the closer I am to the object, the darker that shadow is going to be. And then as I continue, remember this is a cone, so it's not going to be straight across. So as I move further away from that, it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter until it completely disappears. And the way that, if I'm looking at this from the top, the way the shadow looks like is like this is the point of reference, that is the center, and then right here there is your shadow, and it's kind of the same thing in reverse. The center is going to be the darkest point, and then it's going to be the second darkest point, and then the third darkest point. So it looks like a nice gradation from the center all the way out if you look at it from the top view. So that is actually what it looks like, because this is the area that has the least amount of lighting exposing it. And again, remember, light is hitting it, is wrapping around, and then there's also the surfaces also reflecting back on the surface and into that shaded area. Okay, so now I'm going to go right here and I'm going to finish this cone. Okay, and hopefully this wasn't too confusing. Like I said, it's all about breaking things down. But this is pretty much how you find your shadows. And again, this is very crude. This is very basic because there's a lot of elements that are not being applied to. Right now we have the bare minimum. We have basic shapes and a single light source. The second you're now looking into like environmental, so let's say you're out in the real world. So let me go ahead and push this to the side. Okay. Let's say I am a person. I mean, I am a person, but you know what you mean. Okay. I am Billy. Why is my phone beeping? Making sure my phone's not an emergency. Is there an emergency? Negative. No emergency. Okay. So that's me running around the real world. I like comfortable things, so I do wear shirts and jeans. Okay. When I'm in the real world, okay, let's put, right now there's a tree here. Okay, let's say there's a lake nearby. Okay, I am outside. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Okay, so you have immediately, your main light source is going to be the sun. Okay, so that is your main light source right out of the bat, and this is moving in every direction you can think of. Okay, so right now this area behind you, if I'm facing this direction, okay, the area behind you is going to be the hottest or the most highlighted spot in your body. Now also keep in mind that when the sun hits the ground, okay, even though it's grass is also reflecting light back onto you. It won't be as strong as this light, but there's also light kind of bouncing back into you. Okay, now you also have, if this is water, Same thing. The water is reflecting light right back into you. So one of the things that a lot of people tend to do is that for the sake of sanity, if you're doing an environmental piece, they like to kind of simplify their shading. So in this situation, if here is my character wearing a shirt, instead of having to figure out to do all those mathematical, oh, here's the shadow there, they will do implied shadows. So in this situation, okay, this mass of the arm right here, the light's coming from behind it, there's a fold here, so this right here is going to be in shadow. So they kind of fudge it a little bit, but it still gives you the illusion that this character is within the environment. Same thing right here. If the lighting's coming from like not quite behind him but around him, they will put the shading right here indicating that there is a fold to that shirt. And then it will put some right here in the interior of the pants, not all the way through. Okay, so a lot of the shadows are, they're functional, but they are implied. Sometimes what you see in a lot of animation is that they will actually just do a solid 2D character and they don't do a lot of shading because you start getting into, so here I'll show you. You have single tone. And if you watch a lot of anime, you see this. So you have single tone, then you have duotone. Okay, so that's two tones. So normally what you'll see is like, let me see if I have the color pencils for it. Where are my color pencils? Woman, where's my super suit? There we go. I gotta pull this up. And I was just watching some hero, what's called Demon Slayer the other day, and I found some of the slides. So you'll have like, here is the character. Let's say that's the character, and anything that is in shadow. I can't remember if it's red. I think it's red for shading. Okay, so you have duotone. So it's the base tone plus a shadow, and then you have tritone. So you will have now this right here, where the shadows will be indicated. This is for the production team, will be indicated in red, and then the highlight will be indicated in blue. So it gives you a really nice tritone look. So you see that a lot in animation. Like I said, I can't remember. I think red is for shadow and blue is for highlight. But every studio has the way of doing it. But if you ever see that, where you see like the character animations, that's what that means. And it just comes down to like it's just simplification of what is actually happening. Because again, when light hits you outside, the light is bouncing everywhere. So what the artist is trying to do is just simplify. It's like, what are the most obvious points that this person is going to be affected by the light? Now, instead of having to figure out all this stuff, let's say that it's late afternoon. Okay, it's late afternoon, the sun's going down. So in this situation, technically, the way you simplify this is that the light is shining right behind them. And technically, this back here would be in shadow for dramatic lighting. And you see this a lot on anime, okay? And then right here I can figure out, okay, that is my shadow. There's the shoulder. So they'll do, instead of actually trying to draw, unless it's something really dramatic, where they have to show you like the shape of the character, they would just kind of either do a circle or they'll just do like a blob indicating that this is this person's shadow. And again, they'll do the same thing where they go from like really light to like really dark to really light. And it's just sort of like dramatic effect. Yep. At last, my long-loved brother, I have not seen you in forever. There we go. So it'll be something like that. And you see this over and over again. But yeah, this is getting into more complicated stuff. But this is pretty much the base idea, the basic idea. So again, you go from this, pretty much just from understanding this basic core stuff and then actually applying it into your own illustration. Like I said, there are thousands of artists that can explain this a lot better than probably me, but again, this is something that's worked for me, and again, I hope to pass this knowledge to somebody else, just to kind of get your kitty, like your tone to the kiddie pool, and then you can go from there and then figure out what works best for you and your art style in the medium that you're working in. But anyway, guys, that is lesson 10 today, just how to figure out your shadows. I hope that helped you. And yeah, I hope that you guys have a fantastic day, and on to next lesson. Cheers.